Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 12th, 2017 County Council meeting tonight. For our invocation tonight, our pastor got sick, so we need to pray for our pastor, who was supposed to pray for us tonight. Councilman Cronin's going to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance, and if you'll stand, I'll lead us in a prayer. So please remove your hats. Father, we thank you for this time that we can get together, and we just bask in the freedoms that you've given us. Pray for your wisdom on this council tonight and your guidance in these matters that come before us, and that you'll continue to bless our county and our country. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Joe Cronin.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Brazel.
Here.
Councilmember Dave Hammond.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Elam.
Here.
Councilmember Terry Hollander.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Klinghammer.
Here.
Councilmember John White.
Here.
We have no public presentations tonight, correct? Good. So we'll move on to public comments, because I have a feeling we're going to have a few of them. So, Carol, we will start with our first guest tonight, and that is?
Marcia Bear.
Thank you, members of the council, for giving us the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I would like to ask, how many members of the council do not live in a subdivision or an incorporated city? How many do not live there? Yeah. And I would like to thank Councilman Brazel and Cronin for attempting to represent those of us who live in the rural portions of the county. My husband and I live on 38 acres that we purchased 20 years ago. Selected that property 0.6 of a mile off the paved road specifically because we felt capable to take care of ourselves, our family, and our property. We don't need or want the government to tell us when to mow our grass, what types of gates are safe, how to install a pool or a spa. I think there's lots of companies that got that down. And we don't need to be told what type of fence to put up or where to put it. We can have that done with a survey. Please don't tell me these new codes are not a slippery slope for even more invasive and restrictive rules. They obviously are, because they've changed from 2009. There are hundreds of new regs now. How long is it before the international pool spa codes or the international property maintenance codes include rules and regs that tell me, as a rural private property owner, I gotta have a fence around my pond or my lake because it's not safe for the public? And please don't tell me that you won't enforce some of the codes. Again, that ship sailed back in 2015 when they already got enforced in the rural portion of the county. If the ordinance is on the book, one election gets me in deep trouble and responsible for every one of those 8,000 pages. I am not in favor of no building codes. However, I would ask before the council votes on anything that members of the county who wish to have an opportunity to view every one of those documents. After all, they're going to affect every aspect of our life. I thought we were a Republican, conservative county. We want less government, not more. And I'd really appreciate your assistance in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Mr. Davis, welcome back.
Yeah, I'm Bill Davis. I live about a half a mile back that way. I got a haircut. That's probably the reason you didn't recognize me. 60 or 70 years ago, I'm canneling eggs in my father's feed store, and a government guy comes in and explains to my father that I cannot cannel eggs as I am not a certified egg canneler, so I have not gone to the egg canneling school run by the government. I didn't understand that because the half-rotten and stale eggs I was selling to the government. But anyway, push come to shove, my dad sent my younger brother, PJ, to egg canneling school. PJ was not old enough to drive, which meant he was 14 or 13 or something. Egg canneling school had nothing to do with canneling eggs. They didn't have any eggs up there. They didn't show you how to cannel eggs. It was all about filling out the proper forms and reporting in and all that sort of thing. Then you flash forward here 60 years, you got this 80,000-page document here, and how much of that document has anything to do with public health, public safety? As an example, what does it say about housings and electric? Does it say check the function of the electric? Is the electric functioning properly? The electric function probably means you got a panel here, duplex out here, the electric has to get from here to there. You plug in a toaster, check the voltage, see if it made it. If it didn't, it's heating up the wall someplace. Nothing like that in the code, just like the egg canneling school. So I would ask you to appoint some guys like myself who are just not too hot for government to go through that damn thing and take everything out that's frivolous and everything out that's not public health, public safety, and put some limits on things like stairs. The stairs in that code are for like a department store. The stairs to go above a warehouse is an entirely different matter and it should not apply. So anyway, the premier builder in St. Charles City area and home modeler called me aside and I was walking my dog to tell me not to try to build a house in the city of St. Charles because the city of St. Charles had adopted this code and it was impossible. And then I have a 23-year-old guy I'm his hero. He wants to be a business guy and make money. Got a job in Fort Worth, Texas. And he asked me, he said, Bill, should I go to Fort Worth, Texas? And I said, absolutely. Go down there. We can start your own business. The government's off your back. Do it. And if I was 23 years old, I'd go with him. And you got a serious problem, and that you're knocking out the little owner-operator type guys. They can't afford two psychics and a poet to comply with all the rules. And you're catering to big guys like that thing south of St. Charles, Noah's Ark was. They got a $50 million bond, 100-acre development in Wentzville. They got $1.9 million to build the road. And little guys get nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, gentlemen. I will stipulate at the beginning that I have not read all 8,000 pages of this thing. But the comments I have are very brief. I defer to the comments of the preceding speakers who covered what I would like to in some areas. But what I'm looking at is, what is this beast going to cost the people of St. Charles County? Has anybody done a cost-benefit analysis, both to the homeowners, to the property owners, to those who have to comply with it? And now we're adding another bureaucratic level that we will have to pay for out of our taxes. What about me? Now, I built my house in O'Fallon in 2005, 2006. I took a year off from my own business to build it. And now, according to this, it probably isn't safe to live in anymore, because if I sell it, according to this, I will have to raise the standards to the new standards out of my own pocket. This is nonsense. And as I looked at the punitive areas for $1,000 a day or a year in jail for each day, I'm saying to myself, are we in the People's Republic of St. Charles? This might be from California, where the land of fruits and nuts exists, but not here. The bottom line is this. This is a solution in search of a problem that is onerous and is inherently destructive of individual freedom and right. And the only thing to do with this is to put it to death mercifully and quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next speaker, Carol.
Ron Laris.
Hi, gentlemen. Of course, you know where I live. I'm out the south end, west end of the county here. I just wanted, I talked to you last time about number of pages and all that kind of, if you remember from the last one. But I just want to just go a little bit deeper in here and talk about the actual creation of this code. We know we got 183 pages now in the county code that you have, plus the 8,000 that's going to be in the international portions you have that you've listed in there. So the question is really, first of all, I looked through the listings and so forth, and I said, well, look at the national, you're using a national code, which is called the National Electrical Code. You're using that in there. But then all these other codes in there, of course, are international standards. And I just got a question. When you were selecting these, when you were making, deciding what you're going to use, obviously there's got other codes in this country you could have used that were national codes, not international. Why did that all come about and not really get out in the public that was going to take place, that you were going to use international standards? It's very important that we use stuff that has to do with this country. We're proud of our country. We want standards that have to do with our country, and that's what we want to have. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Next speaker.
Bruce Jansen.
Bruce? I assume we're still on the same topic here, Bruce.
We are on the same topic.
Didn't want to break the flow.
And I want to say I concur everything with the gentleman in the blue shirt, because I happen to be somebody from the land of fruits and all those people from California. This bill smacks of California all over the place. It absolutely does. It was brought to my attention. I thought, oh my God, I came here 10 years ago. I thought I got rid of all that. Folks, this is not the bill to go for. We need to not be involved with it at all. And I thought, what's the money trail on this one? You always look at the money trail, at least from out there. And when you look at that, I thought, you know what? This has got to be being pushed by unions, period. And I wonder, in terms of union contributions to campaigns, I wonder about that. And I wonder if there's been any input from union members speaking to council members about this. That's the only people I think who would be behind this thing. They're the ones who gain. And most of the union people who come work here, let me tell you what, they're not from St. Charles. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Kathleen Lenahan, and that is number 6. This is
I
number
will defer because they have said it very eloquently.
God love you, Kathleen. Thank you for that.
And I've already talked to y'all a couple times.
And we appreciate that. So our next speaker would be?
Mary Ann Boatwright.
Hello. Thanks for allowing me to speak. When there are thousands of pages of regulations being rammed through quickly without being read, citizens know we are in trouble. We've seen this movie before. The Affordable Care Act had to be passed to find out what was in it, Nancy Pelosi. It wasn't affordable. We couldn't keep our doctors or our plans. We lost choice, competition, and liberty. Where is the cost analysis and the impact to citizens? Did anyone consider many families and retirees might have difficulty complying with the codes and are paying the fines and the jail time? Did you consider this might affect St. Charles County City's standing on the top places to live in the country? Why would we want international copyrighted codes that are not accessible by we the people without paying $1,000? That makes a mockery of our Sunshine Law. When government invades privacy, dignity, and liberty, its law-abiding citizens, there are intended and unintended consequences. Was no one in St. Charles County capable enough to implement our own building codes? Certainly, we have many business partners and builders in the community who would be able to offer best practices, maintain safety, and competitive pricing. The free market does this every day. Out of 8,000 pages of code, there isn't a person in this room, including council members, who wouldn't have some sort of violation. When was the last time the UN or any international body ever had the United States of America best interests at heart? They have done all they can to transfer our hard-earned wealth to others. They believe we are spoiled. They are jealous that we are free to speak, bear arms, own property, drink clean water, grow our own food, raise livestock that have the audacity to pass gas, eat meat, and drive our fossil fuel vehicles wherever we please. Let's not help the international community diminish our freedoms. We need your commitment not to pass these codes. We need the 2009 codes replaced. That replacement must respect our finances, privacy, dignity, and liberty. We need the government boot off our throats, the government knows out of our business. We are not the East Coast, West Coast, Chicago, Europe, Zimbabwe, or Switzerland. We are St. Charles County. We are Middle America. We are God-fearing, law-abiding, independent, freedom-loving, tax-paying citizens who support the Constitution. It's time to get reasonable. Let's not fine and jail Grandma and Grandpa. That's not cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Brenda Webb.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening to us, giving us the opportunity to speak. All these guys have very eloquently, expressed many of the things that I'm concerned about. I just want to say that you look out here and you see all of these people that showed up, and I will tell you that many, many people picked up what emails I sent out to my list and have just disseminated. There is a massive concern in the county about these things. It's not just a few people. It's not just one little group. It's massive, as you can see. I don't even know all these people. A lot of them I do because I've been doing grassroots for 8 years. But, there's just massive concern. The concern is that these codes are so massive, and only one of you even claims to have read the whole thing. That is frightening to us. The cost, of getting a copy is another huge concern. I spoke to that last time. After the last meeting, I went on Amazon and I checked the cost of the residential code book because that's the one that would, affect me. It was on sale for $99. And the regular price was $130 or $135. It's just wrong for citizens to have to pay for codes to have a copy. I know there's a copy at the county. There's a public access thing that you can try to, page on the internet through 8,000 pages. But the ICC, their statement, their disclaimer says right up front, it's copyrighted and no mechanical or electronic copy can be made. And they have plenty of money behind them to sue whoever they want to. And so, I just think that's wrong. It's wrong to have codes that nobody reads and nobody understands, and we have to wait and see, what we get charged with or what, the inspector finds before we know what the code is. So that's a huge objection. Again, we don't want codes that are, applied to Timbuktu or to typhoons or, or hurricanes or whatever. We want codes that were written in St. Charles County by St. Charles for St. Charles. And I totally agree. There ought to be a lot of people in St. Charles smart enough to design codes that fit our county. And that's really what we want. We're asking you to please, just turn this thing back. And I agree, we want the 2009 overturned or rewritten, or, we want to go back to St. Charles codes, national codes. We don't want international. I mean, they're trying to destroy us. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Next speaker.
Richard Nation.
Richard?
I don't know if I have anything else of value to add to the conversation.
I appreciate that, Richard. There has been a lot that's been said, so it's tough to find something new. Thank you. Next speaker.
Bev Elin.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the council. My name is Bev Allen. I'm the State Director for Concerned Women for America. We have 446 members here in St. Charles County. I'm speaking on their behalf. I lobby at the state capitol. We have 7 core issues, one of them being national sovereignty. I lobby at the state capitol because we hope to push back the federal government through our state government. That's not working out so well. But anyway, but I do admonish our office holders, because your role as an office holder is to protect the life, liberty, and property of the people. That is why civil government was formed. And it seems like we've maybe have forgotten that if we ever learned it in the first place. But I've also been told that each of you have ran as a Republican when you were elected. So I wanted to give you a copy of the Missouri Republican platform, because in this I have to remind the Republicans at the state capitol that they are noted as the party of limited government and small government and less regulations, but it doesn't seem like that happens in real life so much. So anyway, and I highlighted a few of the property-related planks in the Republican platform, and with a bookmark that's the 28 Principles of Liberty. Each year, we give each member of the General Assembly a copy of the 5,000-Year Leap, which is a book that is based on the 28 principles that our founding fathers wrote our Constitution and formed our republic. And those are 28 simple principles. If you govern by those 28 principles, the people of St. Charles will rejoice and call you blessed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol Pitzer?
Carol?
Hi. So I try to go through and pick out what hasn't already been said here.
Good luck with that.
I know. So I'm definitely strongly opposed. I don't believe this is for our protection, but it's against our basic freedoms. That's part of Agenda 2030, just as the PDMP that the council recently passed that I would like to see repealed. I want the council to strap these international building codes, to scrap these codes and make codes that relate to our county's local needs with the help of local experts and approval of property owners of St. Charles County. I want to know who initially brought these codes to you that were passed earlier, and I'd love for you to be able to tell me where they came from, originated from, and I was wondering if anyone that is voting on this bill has read it in its entirety. And if you understand Agenda 21, which I hope you do, that from a high level, I'd like to know how this is different from Agenda 21 or Agenda 30. Mr. Elam is my county councilman, and as I can't even read the codes without investing $104.16. Can you tell me how what codes and fines my septic system, which was installed in October of 1993, according to code, would be subject to under the proposed bill? And I'm hoping that as my councilman, you'll listen to me and vote against this bill. I do thank the councilmen that are Joe Cronin and Joe Brazel that are for this. And let's see, what's new here? The violations and penalties aren't clear. I do see still has a $1,000 fine and imprisonment. I was wondering what the name of the insurance company and agent that the other side is saying is promising the residents of St. Charles County lower premiums by incorporating new building codes that lower the overall ISO rating. What documentation can the council offer to substantiate this opinion? I have a lot of questions. And I understand like the sprinkling systems that it's like now supposed to be okay, but now this is saying it's, I don't know, there's like codes that's saying that it's okay in St. Charles County. Yeah.
Time has expired. I appreciate you speaking. Next speaker.
Brittany Tolan?
Who was that?
As much as I would like to speak, I'm going to defer.
Thank you.
Then we have Josh.
Josh?
I get nervous speaking in public, so bear with me.
Yes, sir.
You know, it's interesting. We started this thing, before we even started, you said, you know, if you don't have to say things that were already said, don't worry about it. Well, this is the third time I've been here, so evidently we have to say it again, because the first two didn't quite work. And the other thing about this, I was late coming here because all the buildings that fell over from the 2009 codes, evidently. See, we have a tendency to say, well, we need these. And a gentleman last time pointed out a code. The first code in this country was written by George Washington. Well, it's interesting, the first code in history was written by a king in Persia about 1700 BCE. And it's interesting, too, to note that George Washington didn't decide to use the international codes that were already in existence. I wonder why that was. Because England already had building codes, and he says, no, we are a republic. Which leads me to something else. We started with a prayer and a pledge. We took a pledge to the republic for which it stands. Do you know what a republic is? A republic is a domestically based entity governing organization of the people, which means if you vote to adopt an international building code, you therefore broke the pledge you just said 15 minutes ago. I was kind of joking when I said I don't speak well in public. I do it for a living. And I will keep doing it as long as you keep voting for things that don't make sense. And I will tell you that it's amazing how many people have spoken on behalf of this thing. Where were they again? So we need to remember, guys, when we're talking about an international building code, and we're talking about codes in general, your job is to protect us from organizations outside of this county that want to abuse and use people. And it's almost getting like an episode of Maury Povich, where we hear things like, oh, well, it helps you save on insurance. Well, the results are in, and that too is a lie. So we really have to say to ourselves, what's the job? Your job is to have the insurance companies come in here then and say, you tell us why you are going to lower or raise rates on people who live here, and then make them prove it. If over 100 people have spoken before you and you don't get it yet, I think maybe next time, instead of codes that we need to replace, it might be politicians.
No more speakers on that subject. Now we have Bill 4484, Alan Atherton.
Thanks for your patience.
Not a problem. This has been very entertaining. It's my first time. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Unlike him, I don't do this very well. I just want to let you know, I live at 2720 South River Road, very near the property that Harris House wants to purchase and build their center. I have nothing against them as an organization. But that being said, I have every objection about them becoming my neighbors. Their building is a 60-bed facility. Right now, they say only 20 beds will be filled with 60-plus employees. That would mean 60 beds, 180 employees, 180 vehicles twice a day. There are small children and hundreds of bicycles and people taking their bicycles back and forth to use the Katy Trail. And that's only their first shift. They're going to have 3 shifts with people coming and going. There's going to be visitors. And they say that their clients will be under constant watch, but are the employees? I live alone, and I love it there. It is safe, it's quiet, it's peaceful. I've been there for 16 years, and a lot of us live there for those reasons, that it is residential and very country. The influx of 80-plus additional people and visitors, traffic pollution, will take all that away, not to mention more people will have an effect on the security. To have to lock my doors and windows every night, it would be a sin. And to have to worry about my safety taking walks, all the things that make this area so very special to many. We won't feel safe anymore with this business in our neighborhood. And another concern that's come up is property value. We were told it might not hurt it, and it may even help. Kind of up in the air. We'd like something a little more firm. Real estate taxes, not-for-profit, who's going to pick those up? I know that eventually someday my area will become the south entrance to St. Charles, but not yet, and not with a rehab center with people living and working there. They have free time. They can explore the area, do whatever they want, run around. I just don't understand why this has to happen in a neighborhood and why there's so many other places they can go instead of a quiet rural neighborhood. Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Becky Marsh.
Becky?
Good evening. My name is Becky Marsh, and I'm the board chair of the governance board of Harris House. In a few minutes, you'll hear from several members of our team about our project, but I'd like to thank you for welcoming us here tonight. We're going to share a little bit about our mission, about our program, and certainly about the project that we hope to complete here in St. Charles County. I would just like to share with you that we're a local nonprofit. We were founded in 1961. Our board is comprised of local citizens, local men and women who are dedicated to furthering the mission of the House, which simply stated is to save lives. Our primary purpose is to help alcoholic and chemically dependent individuals achieve sobriety so that then they have the chance to become healthy, productive, and useful citizens in their community and members of their family. So again, thank you for hearing from us again tonight. I know further into the program you'll hear from our CEO and another member of our team, our engineer. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mark Potter. This was against.
Mark?
Excuse me. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you. I probably should have come here and spoke on the other issue with the building codes I didn't know about ahead of time. But them guys all did that so eloquently before me. I want to reiterate everything that the first speaker said about the Harris House and what it would do to the neighborhood. And it is a non-for-profit business. I know those types of businesses are needed, and they have one in the city of St. Louis, and they want to move it out to St. Charles. It seems to be doing fine. They're doing a good job where they're at. My family owns a property right next door, and I don't want that next to me with, like I said, the drug addicts that are going to be in there and all the traffic that it will have on Arena Parkway. It is so hard right now to get in and out of Arena Parkway, and when you add all those other vehicles that they will have, daily, it's bad unless you put in a stoplight, there then. And it would affect our property values because I've talked to real estate agents and said that this is moving in next to me and what would it do to us, and they said, it would be hard to sell your property to someone who want to live next door to that type of facility. I don't think you guys want that facility next to you in your neighborhood, so that would be another reason why you should, vote the way we feel about it, because it's not a good fit for the neighborhood. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Tom Wickenhauser.
Tom?
Hi, I'm Tom Wickenhauser. I'm CEO of Harris House. So I guess I didn't understand the format for tonight's meeting, and I guess I'm asking, are we going to have an opportunity to go through what our program is and explain it to folks, or?
I think it depends on if people have questions about your bill when your bill comes up. But
okay,
we did a work session on your facility before, so I think the council's aware.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So in that case, I will just wait for questions on the program.
Very well.
Okay, thank you.
And the rest of these are all in support. So we have Angela Wheelahan.
Hi, Angela.
Good evening. My name's Angela Wheelahan. I live at 3205 Springdale. I'm here in support of the Harris House for many reasons, mostly a personal reason. The Harris House is in St. Louis, and it is doing very well. But I think we need something out here in St. Charles. I teach in the Francis House School District, and over the course of the last few years, very many, and when I say many, if one dies, that's too many, young people are dying from heroin and alcohol and drug abuse. My personal story is that I have a 22-year-old son who is a recovering heroin addict, and tomorrow he'll have 6 months. My son didn't start out as a drug addict. Drug addicts aren't all bad. They're not people who are going to go out and rape and pillage people. My son got drugs from a doctor. He got painkillers from a doctor when he hurt his back playing football in his freshman year. And from there, he went to Xanax and then heroin. And on December 13th of this last year, I sent my son to Centerpoint. Somebody brought that up last time. Why didn't you send him to Centerpoint? Because Centerpoint kept him 4 days, and that is all. And when I begged them to keep him longer, they said, no, he hasn't relapsed. Until he relapses, we don't want him anymore. So my son was let out, and it was only by the grace of God, and I believe in a God, that my son somehow made it. And on December 13th, I made a phone call. I called Bridgeway. I called Centerpoint. I called a ton of places on that Wednesday. Actually, I think it was December 14th. And the only one who called me back was Harris House. And my son went into that 28-day program, their STARS program, and they helped to give my son a basis. They helped give my son a way to get out. They educated us as parents. I had to go all the way to Broadway, 3 days a week. I had to go down there for myself, my husband, my other son, for family education and what we could do. I think this is a perfect place for this to go. It's by 364. There are people all over. I have met so many people who wished they had something out here. I have people that I work with in my school whose brother can't get in anywhere and are looking to try to find some place to get sober. You can't just come and go as you please there. My son I could only go on Wednesdays and Saturdays to see him, and on Sundays. So it's not like these people are in and out all the time. It's not like they're coming and going. They helped my son transition into a different home, a men's house. He is now living in a halfway house, but we have nothing out here for those people. So he's living in South St. Louis right now in a men's home. I can't say enough about what this program has done for my son, and there are other people who want this, and I think that when it's all said and done, and I said this before, property values are important to me. I pay taxes, but I also think human life is as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cliff Heitman.
I'll defer to the bill is introduced, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, sir.
Leonard Matheson.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm a psychologist. I'm a neighbor. Whispering Oaks is where I lived for the last 10 years. I work with people who have substance abuse problems, and I work with their families. I've referred people to Harris House. That's a real good program. One of the issues that's been brought up the last time and now tonight is the issue of the nonprofit not paying property taxes, and that's an issue. But I'll make a point that I hope you appreciate. Nonprofits are less expensive to run, so Harris House costs about $10,000 for the 28-day program. Centerpoint, in comparison, costs about $14,000. That's a difference having to do with the nonprofit status. It's a difference that families I refer to really appreciate. I'd like you to take that into account. Thanks very much.
Thanks for your time.
Joy Ebbest.
Thank you. I'm Joy E. Best, and I own property at 2516 South River Road within the parameters close to it. I wish to speak in favor of this particular Harris House. I come from a family that wasn't quite so lucky back in 2011. My son was not able to find someplace to go for treatment, and I was with him when he tried to call probably 10 different places all over the state of Missouri. It was the day after Christmas. He could not find one. He died 3 days later. I support this bill. We need it in St. Charles. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Now we have Bill 4482, Gerald Keevan.
Gerald?
I'll defer till after a while when it comes up.
Yes, sir.
And Arnie Dienoff.
Mr. Dinoff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council, Arnie A.C. Dinoff, public advocate and county resident. Our government has gotten too big for your britches as a council. We have a monthly additional bureaucracy occurs at every council meeting. The people behind me have no idea because they're busy taking care of their families and their children, putting food on the table, doing clothes, taking their kids and grandkids to soccer games, baseball games. They have no idea what this council is doing to our county. The county executive is creating political patronage jobs, and as a matter of fact, in January, created a $100,000 communication director position to manage a communication manager, a communication coordinator, 5 public information officers. It's political patronage jobs in many departments. Excuse me, Mr. Cronin, could you please listen to my comments? I think they're very important.
I listen to your comments every meeting, okay? It's like a repeat. I can do it in my head.
Our county government is growing. You are supposed to be conservative Republicans. Less government, less regulations, less grabbing of our liberties. But no, this council wants to get in our business, wants to get in our homes, wants to take control of our lives. You want access to our properties, both business and residential. This is a money grab with the Building International Code that you have proposed. These are forced laws just because you were given the power. Unreasonable and wrong government regulations, we can fend for ourselves without you babysitting us and writing us citations. How many of you have read the thousands upon thousands, over 8,000 pages of the International Building Code? I would guess none of you have read the entire code. One council member on this dais falls asleep while being paid $750 routinely at every single county council meeting. Your $16,750 annual salary, along with pension and health benefits for you and your family with no cost to you, is ridiculous. What happened to community service? We are taking the marching orders and directions from Mike Hurlbert. Mike Hurlbert was the economic development director for the city of O'Fallon for the last 4 or 5 years, not having any experience in community development or building code regulations. The driving force behind everything is Jared Agee, the code enforcement manager that you hired recently in November. He came from the city of O'Fallon, where he spent a year. And before that, he spent 10 years with the city of University City that cracked down on code enforcement and required occupancy permits for renters and before you sold any house. Mr. Agee got the O'Fallon City Council to pass a fee for $60 of a hot water tank heater.
Your time has expired. Appreciate
Can I
your
please
speaking.
have one more minute?
No, sir. Your time has
Can the
expired.
council please vote to allow me to speak?
No,
Under Robert's
sir.
Rules of
You
Order.
have spoken. Please be seated. Everyone else is
Under
set with the
Robert's
3
Rules of
minutes.
Order, which you have adopted, the council can vote to allow
Sir,
me to
please be
finish.
seated. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
There's one gentleman that had the wrong number on the card. He would like to speak on building codes. He wrote the wrong number.
Come on, sir.
Jeff Halifax?
Will you be our last speaker for tonight?
Correct.
Thank you, guys, for being here.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate your service. I've been a handyman for the last 20 years. I've worked in a lot of these homes that have been built, and some of them are 100 years old, some of them 10 years old. New building codes isn't going to help them, because all these new houses have been built to the same code. Ground moves. I fixed cracked foundations, cracked floors, shifting walls in the upstairs portions of the house. And right next door, the house is fine. There's no way to regulate moving ground. I don't know how passing additional codes is going to help. What we have will work and is working. It just needs to be enforced. I don't know how the building inspectors come around. I'm not in on building of the homes. I'm only there when the homes have a problem and I fix them. I've fixed flooded homes. I've fixed broken foundations. I've fixed broken walls where they crack at door openings. A lot of it has to do with things moving. Things just move. And you can't regulate moving things. It's going to move. You can't stop it. There are some things that they've come up with recently that the builders are finding out, and it does stop. I currently own a home where my walls aren't moving. I'm not having cracking problems, but it was the builder that found the solution to the problem. And what needs to happen, I believe, is more of these builders need to get with one another and say, hey, this is working for me, and this is working for you, and let's try and use this or that. But foundations just move. Ground moves. Thank you for listening to me, and thanks again.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for all the public comments tonight. Move on to the oral report from our county executive.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I pointed this out when we had the work session, but I need to say it again so it gets in the record.
Yes, sir.
That Harris House project, I have a cousin who's involved with the property that's being sold, so I need to recuse myself from the participation in that decision.
Very well.
So I just want to make sure that gets in the gets in the record. And then I also want to point out, I think you're going to resolutions at some point here.
We are.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that resolutions are yours, that I really don't have a part to play in that either.
And proclamations would be yours.
That's correct.
Very well. Anything further?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Move on to our consent agenda. Are there any items? Oh, sorry, I need to make a note that on the consent agenda, our last item there on community development, if the county register receives letters of opposition by 5 p.m. tomorrow, then the council will hold a public hearing at 7 p.m. on June 26th, and will also consider the vacation of the consent agenda item. That being said, are there any items to be removed on the consent agenda? Motion to approve?
Motion for approval is submitted.
Second.
Motion to approve in the Senate. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda items are approved. Move down to our Resolution 1704.
Resolution 1704, sponsored by Joe Brazel, a resolution proclaiming the month of June 2017 Immigrant Heritage Month in St. Charles County. Whereas generations of immigrants from every corner of the globe have built our country's economy and created the unique character of our nation. And whereas immigrants continue to grow businesses, innovate, strengthen our economy, and create American jobs in St. Charles County. And whereas immigrants have provided the United States with unique social and cultural influence, fundamentally enriching the extraordinary character of our nation. And whereas St. Charles County has a rich history of welcoming immigrants, from the French-Canadian fur trader who founded the city of St. Charles, to the team of Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, who chose St. Charles as one of the first stops on their expedition of the territories acquired through the Louisiana Purchase, and to the immigrants from every corner of the globe who call our county home today. And whereas immigrants have been tireless leaders, not only in securing their own rights and access to equal opportunity, but also have campaigned to create fairer and more just society for all Americans. And whereas St. Charles County welcomes and encourages immigrants to our county to follow all federal and state immigration laws with respect to legal entry, and to further abide by the Constitution of the United States and all federal, state, and local laws, as all our ancestors have done in the past. It is important to recognize the contributions, the role of immigrants in building and enriching our nation and contributing to the continual economic growth and well-being of our nation. Now therefore be it resolved by the County Council of St. Charles County, Missouri as follows. Section 1, the County Council of St. Charles County, Missouri hereby proclaims the month of June 2017 as Immigrant Heritage Month.
Any questions or comments on the resolution?
I got a quick comment.
Mr. Brazel.
Yeah, on this resolution, I was asked to put this forth, and I sent it out, and I thought, this is whatever, but it's for the immigration month, but what we did add is where you have to follow federal, state, and immigration laws, because really we're all immigrants. I mean, my great-grandparents came from Ireland, and so I just did my DNA thing, and I'm like 82% Irish, so.
Explains a lot. From another Irishman.
Yeah, he's another Irishman. So anyway, so that's why we did it. And then as long as you follow, sure, we're all immigrants and follow the Constitution and love our country, and you're welcome. Absolutely. So that's how I see it.
Mr. Cronin?
I would like to direct for a legal question to Mr. Hazelwood. I believe you worked on this, Keith, and there's nothing in this resolution could construe any anything negative to the county, is that correct?
Not in the county councilor's opinion.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none?
A resolution proclaiming the month of June 2017 Immigrant Heritage Month in St. Charles County. Councilman Cronin?
Yes.
Councilman Brazel?
Yes.
Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilman Klinghammer?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Resolution 1704 passes. We move on to bills for final passage. We start with Bill 4480.
Bill number 4480, an ordinance amending section 405.060 and section 405.080.c of the ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, OSCCMO, to authorize certain meeting facilities as well as rural recreational activity as conditional uses in the agricultural zoning district.
Any questions or comments about Bill 4480?
Ed, would you mind stepping forward for just a second, please? I want to explain to the people that are here that this is something that we had an issue with the county code on and we worked through, okay? Mr. Davis, I hear you loud and clear, sir. If you're still here, you probably, well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. That man created a lot of jobs as a businessman in O'Fallon area, and I'm a businessman in O'Fallon area. Ed contacted me because he's a businessman up in the Forestell area, and he wasn't allowed with his pumpkin patch to do what he wanted to do, okay? Because our code did not allow him to do what we wanted to do. So I wanted you folks to realize that there's a method to this, and it works pretty well. And long and short of it, I arranged a meeting with a couple of county officials with Ed, and we figured out what we needed to do to make Ed be able to stay in business and make the neighbors happy in his community, and also to provide a real valuable service that his business does, okay? And we crafted that, worked together. We worked on a conditional use permit to allow Ed to do what he wants to do. And this is how the process is supposed to work when it comes to codes and handling things outside of the codes. Additionally, we do have an appeals process that's spelled out in the new bill tonight that will also further assist citizens like Ed having issues like that. And Mr. Keevan, if you'll stand up before, you've been a frequent flyer to conditional use permits to this county, and I've worked for you in one of my districts before. And I think you'll also tell the crowd that when there is a problem in general, that's what your elected officials are there for. They're to work through the problems and get it resolved so you can do your business the way you want to do your business, and we can keep our nose out of it, okay? And I'm very happy that this all turned out well for you.
So
and I think the outcomes for you have always worked out pretty well with the county. And I want you folks to know that, you know, we are your representatives and we're here to help you, okay? And so that being said, you got anything else to say about it? Okay.
I just want to add that actually Mr. Adjie has been extremely helpful to me. And I would agree, you know, the government can be slow, the government can be hard to understand, but if you work with the folks, they'll work with you, and everybody involved has been just absolutely spectacular. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Mr. Brazel.
I think the point is, though, Joey, that these gentlemen shouldn't have to go through all that stuff because of all the roadblocks.
And I get that, but by going through this, we could also make sure the neighbors' concerns were addressed as well, and that we have a responsibility to the neighbors of these properties as well. So that being said.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none.
Bill number 4480, an ordinance amending section 405.060 and section 405.080.c of the ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, OSCCMO, to authorize certain meeting facilities as well as rural recreational activity as conditional uses in the A agricultural zoning district. Councilmember Brazel?
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond?
Yes.
Councilmember Elam?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Councilmember Klinghammer?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Bill number 4480 passes. We'll move on to bill number 4481.
And these are for introduction. Bill number 4481, requested by Hope Woodson, sponsored by Mike Elam, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement for financial assistance, grant agreement number 2017006 between St. Charles County and the St. Louis Jefferson Solid Waste Management District for receipt of funds in an amount up to $55,000 and amending the 2017 budget adopted by Ordinance 16-104 by appropriating additional funds in the general fund budget, Department of Public Health. And this is for final passage. I've made a mistake. This is final passage.
We're all good. Any questions or comments on 4481? Seeing none?
An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement for financial assistance, grant agreement number 2017006 between St. Charles County and the St. Louis Jefferson Solid Waste Management District for receipt of funds in an amount up to $55,000 and amending the 2017 budget adopted by Ordinance 16-104 by appropriating additional funds in the General Fund Budget, Department of Public Health. Councilmember Hammond?
Yes.
Councilmember Elam?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Councilmember Klinghammer?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Councilmember Brazel?
Yes.
Bill number 4481 passes. Now we move on to bills for introduction, starting with Bill 4482.
Bill number 4482, requested by Michael Hurlburt, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance granting conditional use permit CUP 17-04 for boat and recreational vehicle storage to Keevan Brothers Storage LLC, property owners, and Gerald Keevan, applicant.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Cronin.
Mr. Keevan runs one of these operations within literally a stone's throw from my house. It's right across the tree line. It's always clean, it's landscaped, it's pretty, it's very well run, has not created any problems for me, my neighbors, or anybody in my district.
Explains if you have any stone damage, you know who to come after now. Mr. Brazel.
This is the one, this is right next to the one you just did, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, so the one yeah, and that's a very clean operation, so it's right next to the one he's already did, so, yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to 4483.
Bill number 4483, requested by Michael Hurlburt, sponsored by John White, an ordinance amending the zoning district map of the County of St. Charles, Missouri by rezoning land from R3A, single-family residential district with floodway fringe and floodway overlay districts, to R1E, single-family residential district with floodway fringe and floodway overlay districts, as per application CUR 17-02.
Any questions or comments on 4483? Seeing none, we'll move on to 4484.
Bill number 4484, requested by Michael Hurlburt, sponsored by John White, an ordinance granting conditional use permit CUR 17-02 for a convalescent home institution to Zimmer Family Properties LLC and River Bluff View LLC property owners and to Harris House Foundation.
Any questions or comments on 4484? Seeing none, we'll move on to 4485.
Bill number 4485, requested by Craig Tykowski, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance establishing new traffic regulations and establishing penalties for violations thereof.
Any questions or comments on 4485? Seeing none, we'll move on to 4486.
Bill number 4486, requested by Amanda Brower, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the city of O'Fallon for allocation of funds for work associated with the construction of I-70 South Outer Road.
Any questions or comments on 4486? Seeing none, we'll move on to 4487.
Bill number 4487, requested by Betty Jan Kramer, sponsored by Mike Elam, an ordinance naming the park land located between Kisker Road and Pittman Hill Road as Baltic Creek Park.
Any questions or comments about this? County Executive, you have anything you want to add to this?
I think it's kind of catchy. And it does say a little bit about the history of the area. My guess is, the Baltic Sea, there's probably some German immigrants that lived around it from Prussia. Can't really prove that. But since this is Immigrant Month, maybe that's appropriate. But Baltic Creek Park, obviously, this is your call, but that's our recommendation to you.
Mr. Greipsue and I have had a number of discussions. I did not know that creek was called Baltic Creek. So
We didn't either until we found an old map.
There you go. It takes a little investigation. Mr. Cronin.
And I won't say the word, but there's another creek down in Mr. Brazel's district, okay, that runs through, okay? If we knew a park down there, and it also would relate to immigrants, and you know which one I'm talking about. Anyway, we better avoid that one. There's a creek down in that area they call Krauts Run, okay?
Oh.
Yeah, okay? So if we're gonna, I don't know if we want to have Krauts Park or not, so some of the Germans may object to that.
Kraut Run, isn't it?
Kraut Run, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? That wraps up bills for introduction. We move on to tabled bills. Do I entertain a motion on Bill 4475?
I'd like to make a motion to remove Table Bill 4475 from the table and have discussion regarding it.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? We'll start with you, Mr. Hammond.
This is all in favor, so this is just to remove it from the table.
Oh, sorry, yes. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Hammond.
Well, I guess we should look at the history of what they're calling the International Building Code, because it actually is America's code. This code was developed for years, by 3 different model codes in this country. One was the Southern Building Code, one was the Building Code Officials Administration, and there was another one out west that they used. Those 3 model codes came together to form one national building code in this country. Other countries looked at our code and they decided they wanted to adopt America's code that had been developed over the years. Now, where did this code develop, America's code? It developed from history. When hundreds of people died in the Coconut Grove fire or other major loss of life in this country, they looked at what caused these fires or what caused these buildings to collapse. And so they started developing codes. People have an expectation when you go in a building that you're in a safe building. It's not going to fall on your head like the Skywalk up in Kansas City, where they had inferior building codes. You have a certain expectation when you buy a new home that it's not going to catch fire, that it's a safe house. And those codes were developed over the years after people were killed in house fires, or the house collapsed, or because of a 70-mile-an-hour windstorm that surely most houses should be able to withstand, and they didn't. That's how these codes were developed. So they're America set the technology. American citizens, American building officials, American architects, American engineers, American firemen, fire chiefs, those who developed the codes that we now have in this country, that now are being used in Canada and other countries in the world because they make sense. In the same codes.
That's out of order. That's out of order. These people, ma'am.
Folks.
You know, I sit here and listen to you, and you had questions, and you wonder why we have these international building codes like there's some strange thing. The same standards that we've used for years are a part of those 8,000 pages.
Let's just use the standards we have.
Sorry. Public comment's over.
I can tell you why we don't use the same ones. Because of new technology. People want to use new building products. If you don't know anything about them and they haven't been tested or somebody's looked at them to make sure that they'll withstand to meet certain standards, that's where these building codes came from. So as standards, one of the things that came up recently, that one of the councilmen asked about, manufactured floor joists. They're great. We used to use standard lumber that was developed, that grew in forests. Well, they started making manufactured floor joists that are 10 times stronger than a regular wood floor joist. Well, there has to be standards that they have to meet. They test those materials. That's part of all of the standards in these 8,000 pages. We have standards for bolts and nuts and screws. Well, those all have to be in the code so everybody knows what's acceptable, that those products have been tested and they meet the standards of this country. And what people expect when they go into a house, that the floor doesn't collapse or the roof doesn't fall in or the wiring doesn't catch fire. That's why we have building codes. And the only thing we're doing is trying to keep up with the current codes and new building standards that are used throughout this country. if other countries are looking at us, say, hey, you guys have a great record. You know, you look at India where they just had thousands of people die in a building that collapsed. They don't use building code standards. You see it every day in India and other countries that don't have building code standards. So that's why other countries are looking at America and say, hey, you guys got a great safety record. We want to be a part of that. We want to adopt that code. So they started making it in different languages. So it became the international building code so other countries could adopt our standards. So, you know, you can sit back there and smile and laugh and whatever you want to do, but that's why we have them. And that's what I've dedicated my life. I've said in these code change hearings, they're not some put away in some back room where guys think of this stuff. They're architects, engineers, building inspectors, building officials, different people in the industry that come to these code change hearings and they want to use their product or they want to improve on the product and the codes. That's where they come from.
Mr. Hollander.
Yes, I just want to mention a couple of things here. Number one, one of the main speakers here said that we are not against building codes, okay? It seems to me that you are against building codes because the truth of the matter is, if we don't pass these building codes, we are going to revert to the 2009, quote, building codes, okay? Second of all, someone else mentioned that St. Charles is one of the top places to live. I agree with you. I've lived my entire life here. We have a lot to be proud of. To my knowledge, as the growth of St. Charles County has boomed in the last 20 years, we've been under these international building codes, okay? Has not hindered our growth, has not hindered people moving here from any part of the region. In fact, people move here and are overjoyed with what they find here in St. Charles County. The third thing is I've been on the council for 8 years now, and if this was a huge problem, I believe there would be people like you folks parading through here the last 8 years saying, gosh, this is bad. I got penalized. This building, we haven't seen that. I have not seen that in 8 years. There's an isolated instance, which Mr. Cronin has talked about, that we work with and we deal with. One of the speakers mentioned that there was an absence of people that were in favor of these building codes speaking. And I think that speaks volumes. There were no builders here opposed to these building codes. There were no realtors. Now, I know Mr. Davis was here, and he is a commercial businessman and done a great job, as he said. But I'm talking about, most of you were talking more about home building. In the last 5, 6 weeks, 7 weeks that we've been dealing with this, I haven't gotten one call from a home builder saying, boy, you guys are way off base on these, quote, building codes. And the last thing I want to mention is that these things come up periodically. And I know I've voted for the international building codes several times. In fact, we have one member of our council, I believe Mr. Brazel, has voted for the international building codes a minimum of 3 times, because he's been on the council for a very long time.
No, just one time, I think it was 2009, wasn't it?
2003.
Okay. So twice. And I think that's okay. So that's my points. My points are very simple. I see a need for them. I think that you people have done a great job pointing out problems. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe a lot of those, quote, problems are going to be in this substitute bill with an attempt to correct those problems.
Mr. Cronin.
Just as a point of order, I think it's time now to make a motion to amend Bill Substitute 4475, replace it with Substitute Bill 4475, and I'd like to open that discussion because there's significant changes in Substitute Bill 4475. So I'll make that motion to amend Bill 4475 and replace it with substitute Bill 4475.
Second.
All right.
All in favor?
All in favor?
No, just discussion
No,
at this
sorry,
point.
discussion first.
Oh, discussion
Yes.
first.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we can't do that until after
Okay.
the discussion is
All
done.
right, I'm sorry. Anyway, after the last meeting, and of course, I voted no against for it, but I voted no primarily for two reasons. One is I represent an agricultural area, and I hear, like Mrs. Bear's concerns about fencing, okay, loud and clear. People that live out in the country don't want to be told where they can put a fence for their cattle, and a few other things that apply to the agricultural area. So this new substitute bills address those. So if you live on 37 acres in Defiance, you're not going to have to get a permit for a fence, okay? Or somebody told you that. The other thing, there's a lot of other things that affect my district as well, since that I represent most of the growth in the Wentzville area, North O'Fallon area, and there's a lot of new subdivisions out there where young families like my son, my daughter-in-law, and my first grandchild live in a brand new home out there. And I want to make sure that two things, those homes are safe, but also they're affordable. So I contacted builders in my district, 3 of them, electrical contractors, lumber yards, and I said, what can we do to walk that fine line between making sure the homes are safe and we don't have the increase in home prices? People ask, have you checked in the price of homes? Yes, I did, with 2 major builders that build homes both in the city of St. Charles and elsewhere in the county. And the total cost for the new code, okay, would have been anywhere between $6,000 and $10,000 per home, and to me that was excessive. So I worked on the substitute bill and find out the hot button items that were causing the bulk of the extra cost. And I'm happy to say we've got most of those addressed, and that increase in cost is probably 80% less than what it was originally, okay? That's not quite good enough, and I will be addressing that in a future amended bill, because there's some controversy regarding an item called arc fault breakers that they're using in some new home constructions, and I've been working with Councilman Hammond and also some building officials in other cities that I put calls into. That all being said, Mr. Klinghammer had also worked on the penalty clause, because I think we heard you loud and clear about penalties, okay? And the penalties are approximately, I'll let him address that, but they're considerably less than they were originally, okay? The other thing, and you heard when I pointed out to Mr. Keevan and that, we also have an appeals process that's spelled out in this new substitute bill, where a citizen can come in and say, look, I think what you're telling me to do, I can do this and it's better. Well, there's going to be a commission and a hearing piece where you can deal with that as well. So I think the substitute bill, while it's not addressing everything we probably need to change, okay, it's addressing a bunch of it, okay, and we're trying to walk that line between the bill being not onerous to people in rural areas, to make sure new home construction is safe for young families, and not to make it too unaffordable. So that being said, folks, ask, well, where's the money? Who's follow the money or anything? I don't take campaign contributions. I don't need this job. Okay, I do it because I grew up in this county. I love this county. I got 4 generations of my family live in this county, including a grandson in a brand new house that has to meet those codes. And I'm damn glad they met those codes, because I don't want him burning up in the middle of the night. So bear in mind that our motives are pure. Okay, you can say what you want to say, but I know these guys in this board, and they are all Republicans, and we're walking that line, and it's a tough line. So that being said, I think the substitute, it ain't perfect, okay, but it's something that we did a lot of significant improvements on, and I think we can tweak this thing a little bit more and really have something good. And that being said, I'll pass
Mr.
on to you.
Brazel's next, then Mr. Klinghammer.
I'd like to say a couple things. First of all, I did vote for the International Building Code back. I thought it was once, and it was back whenever that was.
It's every 6 years.
And you remember, the older you get, the smarter you get, and the more conservative you get. So you make mistakes in your career as an elected official, and a lot of things you learn as you go. And that's all there is to be said about that. And for the council members who don't get complaints about the codes and the international building codes dealing with county government, is because they don't have, their constituents don't deal with county government. Me and Cronin have the highest percentages, and maybe Klinghammer, of the rural districts in the county. So the folks who I represent are going to be having to deal with this stuff. The city council members are already dealing with municipal laws. They don't deal with the county laws. So that's the big difference. And I get complaints about this stuff all the time. This department, the Community Development Building Department, is the biggest complaint department I get for being a county councilman, and it's the absolute fact. It's dysfunctional and it doesn't run properly. And these rules are just adding more problems and more burden to the people in this county. I sent out questions last Friday and then more today, and I was supposed to have a meeting with some administration personnel to answer my questions, me and Mr. White, and it got canceled at about 1 o'clock today. I had 15 questions, and a lot of the, if you read through all the bureaucratic nonsense that's put on this stuff, you can sit there, and I don't want to disrespect Dave because I know his heart and soul's in this, and he was a great building commissioner. I've been in construction my whole life, 30-something years. And Dave was easy to work with, but it's different when you're out there and you're doing it and you're creating jobs and you're building things and you're getting building permits. I would be surprised to see if anybody on this floor has ever got a building permit from St. Charles County. I would be shocked. I don't think they have. Maybe from a city, but not St. Charles County. And so there are things that need to be done, and then it's just putting more and more burden on people to deal with this stuff. Like the appeals process, Mr. Cronin we just got this Friday. And it is an improvement, I suppose, because there's quite a few things that he did eliminate, but there's still things in here. The fines, it says fines get referred to allowable 47.9353.1B RSMO SUP.2016. Well, what the hell does that say?
It's spelled out.
No, then you gotta refer to the state statute, and it says did you know that the fines are going to be from $250 to $450 per occurrence? That's what that statute says. And then a work stop order is $250. So if you have a difficult inspector and you're a homeowner or a small contractor or something, and you don't understand the codes, and you get either a stop work order or you get a violation because it ain't done right, is that a code violation or is that a 250? The stuff is vague and it's left up to the interpretation of a bureaucrat. And that's the problem. And, I guess, you can say we need safer codes, but it's like the car industry. You can only make a car so safe, and then it starts costing the consumer a ridiculous amount of money. And that's the same thing with this. There's things in here that are just costing us ridiculous amount of money. I guess Joe's, again, I haven't read this yet because we just got it, and that's why we should probably table this, because there's a lot of points in here that have not been addressed, and I couldn't even have the meeting today, and Mike and Jared are both gone today, and so what's the big rush to push this thing through? And then the thing, Ms. George, you sent this note out last week. What I want to know is who's pushing this from the administration? Is it you or Mr. Oman? Who's really wants this to go through? Out of the administration, it's coming from you guys, so who's pushing it?
I'm sorry. Would you like to talk about this at some time?
Who is pushing this from the administration? Because the council didn't come up with
Well,
this. So who is pushing this?
Who's pushing it?
Who is putting it forth for the council? Because we're taking the burden.
It says requested by Michael Hurlburt.
So Mike's pushing it?
And sponsored by Cronin, Elam, Hammond, Hollander, and Klinghammer.
Okay, so the council's the one that's pushing it?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I want to know. So that's not coming from the administration?
Real quick.
It's our bill.
Real quick, I don't know about, I think the word pushing is the wrong word. I think it's present.
Mr. Chairman.
I taught American history for 34 years. I think I would correct all you people. But the point here is the interpretation of pushing. I think the word we want to use is presenting, because by council ordinance, these things come up every 6 years, and they must be presented to us.
But Terry,
So
you
nobody's
don't
pushing
you
anything.
don't have to. You're making it sound like we have to pass this. It's like, oh my God, if we don't pass this, the sky's falling. That's not true. But let me finish because I didn't interrupt you. So last week we get this email from Jennifer George. If you guys read it, I put it in my notes. If any of you guys had to,
We read it.
Read them. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So it said that the counties that are contracted with this county on these building code inspections are concerned that we may not pass these updated codes. That's simply not true. I called these cities. Augusta wants nothing to do with the 2016 building codes, and it simply says in this email that they're going to pull the contract. And then it says, I called Don Licklider up. They don't want, they may pull the contract if they put the 2016 building codes in. This memo was totally reversed.
Wait, just a minute. That memo actually says that the administrators had a meeting, if you look at it closer, Joe.
I know, it does say that. So
It says
the bureaucrats are making.
It says the administrators had a meeting, and that's where it came from. The elected official in this case must have disagreed with his own administrator.
No.
Michael Padella was the administrator from Weldon Springs.
Don Licklider met with the council, his council, and they said they do not want this.
Yes, sir.
So
If Don Licklider has an opinion, he's certainly able to express it. I was told about that meeting, and what Jennifer did was to pass on to you something that she was told. She did not edit it. She did not change it in any way except to tell you what she had been told, so that later on you didn't say, boy, I wish somebody would have told me that. And I don't understand why there's a problem with her doing that.
Because it was misleading. It was saying that the cities want this. That's the way I read it.
No, it said that the administrators wanted it.
Well, the administrators are the
read it word for
bureaucrats. They're
word.
not elected officials. I mean, they shouldn't even be.
Mr. Brazel, I would make the point to you that this was passed along as the people who were at that meeting suggested that. If you had a conversation with someone else who was not in that meeting, who had a difference of opinion, that's fair. I would take exception with the way that you're presenting it, because you're.
Well, let me get to a point.
That would be appreciated.
We have an analysis here.
Yes, sir.
And they're about the ARC circuits today. Okay, so we don't know, is it bedrooms, is it full house, a $6 ARC circuit versus a $65 ARC circuit. So we're told that it was just bedrooms, but now we're told that it's the whole house. And so it's like, the analysis, there's inaccuracies, and it's like, what is it exactly are we passing? Because we have these conversations, and Dave, you and I have been good. We've talked to each other 3, 4, 5 times today on the phone, and it's like nobody seems to understand exactly what we're passing. So my request is that we table this until we know exactly what we're passing.
Mr. Klinghammer, then I'll come back to you. Mr. Klinghammer.
I usually don't get applause until after I talk. That's okay.
It's unusual to introduce you and they applaud.
A couple of things. We did listen. We did enact changes that we think make the bill better. Does it do everything? No. And I thank the input that we got. And you know, Mr. Davis, I've known for a long time. He has told me the definition of a republic more than once for over 20 years now. And I do take it to heart, and I do listen to what people tell us. That's one of the reasons that we have every meeting starts with public comment. Some of the time it gets redundant, and some of the time it's a little hard to take, but we do it and we listen to it, and we try to take the suggestions that are brought to us and make what we're doing better. And that's in fact what we did. There was examples that were brought up about the penalty phase. It was too much. Brenda Webb, we had a conversation about it also. It was too much, and it was way over what we've ever what's ever been handed out. And no, you shouldn't go to jail for up to a year if you use the wrong size 2-by-dimensional lumber in your floor joist. That's ridiculous, and we agreed. We're taking it out. That is we slashed what it was from the 2009 code that everybody wants to revert back to. We took that out, and we're correcting it in the 2015 code. We've cut the penalty phase down in half. I think those are all good things. Mr. Cronin brought up several other changes that are incorporated into the amended version that's before us now. We went back and forth on a lot of different issues about whether or not there should be drywall or other fire protectant system on the bottom of engineered floor joists. Does it make it safer? Yeah, it probably does. Is it expensive? Yes, it is. So at the end of the day, after much discussion and listening to what the people told us, we've now deleted that from the bill that's before us tonight. So I think that this statements by several people that we don't listen, that we're autocratic, and we just get our giant rubber stamp out and go along to get along, is quite honestly a bunch of phooey. And it's hard to take it week after week, and at the same time, we have spent hundreds of hours going through this. We've met with HBA representatives. We've met with builders. We've met with other code officials from around the cities. I personally went out and talked to builders that are building right down the street off of the Fifth Street extension to find out how these new codes that the city of St. Charles adopted almost a year ago is affecting their ability to build houses in the villages of Provence and out in Newtown, where there's more new houses going up as fast as they can build them. So, we're trying to take what's out there and incorporate it so that it makes sense for countywide in the unincorporated areas also. And yes, there are differences. There's agricultural areas, but there's also areas that are unincorporated but still look an awful lot like a municipality. They're subdivisions. And I would argue that they're really, in some areas, not that much different than being in a city. If you're in a subdivision that's on acre lots, it's not that much different. And yes, people have the right to pick out whatever builder they want and to buy a house that is as safe as they want it to be. The world has changed. It is not like it was in the 1900s when construction was relatively simple and you could go down to Rao Lumber here in town and buy some lumber and build your own house. That's not the situation that we're in today. And the houses that we live in are a whole lot safer because of that. Ground fault outlets make sense. They keep a lot of people from being shocked. That was a significant change in a building code that came about. Now we think of it as a matter of course. Of course, if there's an outlet by your bathroom sink, it's going to have that little switch in it that helps prevent people from getting shocked. It's just a good idea. So if your electric razor falls in the sink, it doesn't kill you. That's a good idea. And we should not be embarrassed about where that idea came from. And I don't know. I truly don't know if that was an idea that came from Canada or if it was somebody at UL Laboratories that came up with it. I don't know. The only thing I know about is that it was a good idea and we ought to incorporate it in the houses. Is there an opportunity for it to go too far? Yes, there is. That's why we need to look at it. We need your input to tell us the things that are major obstacles that are going to stymie the growth. It's going to curtail about what we're doing with our homes. And to Mr. Brazel's point, if it costs a lot more than what it's worth, we need to factor that in as well. But it's not just because it made a house more expensive that automatically it's a bad thing. Sometimes I would argue that the cars that we're driving today in 2017 are a whole lot more safe than the cars that I first started driving. My first car was a 1974 Dodge, and it was not anywhere near as safe as the car that I'm sending my kids out to drive in today. There's a lot better features to it, and they are safer. And I think that we should embrace those changes, but we ought to look at them also and make sure that it applies here. And I think that we're doing that. And I think we've done a pretty good job with it.
Thank you. Mr. Cronin.
I just wanted to say, related to arc fault breakers, okay, that is something, there's been a little alternative facts and there's been some misrepresentation, et cetera, about it, but I've got confidence in Mr. Hammond. I plan on talking this with Mr. Brazel. I plan on getting together all the information I can on it to find the true cost. I have talked to 2 builders, electrical contractor about it. I want to get to the bottom of it, and I'm relating on Dave's expertise to help with it. And if that's something that we need to address, we'll address. I don't represent Mr. Brazel's district, but I can tell you anybody in my district, which is west of 79 and north of 70, if you've got a specific problem with this code, or some of the building department tells you can't do whatever you want to do, okay, you get a hold of me, and I've been 6 years I've been spending doing this, working through that. Before that, I spent 4 years as an alderman in the city of St. Paul doing the same thing. The system works if your elected representative does what they're supposed to do, and you're an open-minded person willing to learn why these laws are in place. That being said, I think the substitute bill is as good as we can get right now. Can it get better? Darn right it's going to get better. Am I going to address the arc fault breakers 2 weeks from now? You bet I am. And I'm going to address anything else that pops up. And I want to make sure people like Mr. and Mrs. Bayer don't have to worry about the county coming down and telling them what kind of fence they can put up, et cetera, like that. I know you folks. I know your family. I don't want that. We're local people like you. Me and Mr. Brazel do hear a lot more complaints about it because we live where town meets country. And you're likely going to do that some, okay? But I can tell you and I just pointed out Mr. Keevan and Ed directly because they've had issues where they've gone down to the building department and they've told they can't really do what they want to do within the existing code we have, and we get that code fixed. We get conditional use permits. We talk about it. We get things done. And we're going to continue to do this. And this bill's not going to please everybody, but my name wasn't on that first bill, and I voted against it. My name's on the second one, and I'll vote for it because I think it's a big improvement over the first bill, and I think it also shows the public that we're not letting this die. We're going to keep working on it, and we're going to get the best we can get it.
Mr. Hammond.
Yes, one lady mentioned not being able to get to get a code book. Those are, when the codes are adopted, we provide copies to the library. At one time, in order to build a house, you had to have 4 different code books because there was electrical code, the mechanical code, and the plumbing code, and then the residential code. Well, everything got put together. Now there's one book. So you can go buy one book. If you want to build a house, you want to know what the codes are. The electrical there's, the plumbing, the mechanical, and everything's in one book. And you can, if you want to make a copy of a page of a code so you can remember what it said, I don't think that anybody's going to file a lawsuit against you because I know it's done all the time. If you want to remember something in a page of a book, and you make a copy of it, a poem or something, I don't think anybody's going to arrest you or sue you for copyright violation. And I'm sure the International Building Code has better things to do than to sue somebody because they made a copy of a couple pages out of a code book. So that's all else.
Mr. Klinghammer.
One of the, I've been doing this in local government for a long time, and one of the things I've learned over the last 20 years is that all council members have the right and should be respected on asking questions and getting the answers to those questions. I think that's just one of the core things that we all owe each other here. And Mr. Brazel has a series of new questions that weren't answered, and I think that those answers are owed. And we need to listen to them. Mr. Cronin, you've got some other ones that you said as early as next week or 2 weeks from now. We're going to be incorporating those as well. I don't have a problem with holding this over if we get those questions asked and answered in a timely fashion. Waiting until the day of the meeting doesn't really give the rest of us an opportunity to get on the same page. So I would encourage, as much as possible, council members to ask questions and get the information disseminated to the rest of us so that we're on the same page. We have the same information that we're going forward with. So Joe, at times it's hard to agree with you because you come at things with a little different slant than the way I look at them. But I don't deny the fact that you have the right to ask questions and have those answered. I think you had 8 or 9, I didn't count them all, but I think there was 8 or 9 different questions that were listed out. Jared wasn't able to meet with you today, so let's, and Mr. Cronin, you've already said you're hot on the pursuit of correcting the ground fault or the ground arc one, so I don't have a problem with tabling again for another 2 weeks, and I'll make a motion to do such.
Motion's made to table.
Second.
You have a bill right now that just is, you can't really table a bill, you're in the substitute mode at this point. You have a first and a second and discussion on the substitute.
On accepting the substitute?
You haven't accepted the substitute at this
So
point.
motion's made and second on the substitute. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Substitute is accepted.
Now the motion
Adopted.
is to Table the substitute.
Mr. White, did you wish to weigh in here?
I just agree with I agree with Mr. Klinghammer. I think we should wait, and if these kind folks out there have more questions about it that we want us to look into, it gives us the time to do it. So you can either contact me or contact any council member with what you want us to look into. We'll be happy to do that before we bring it to a vote and see if we can incorporate it into a new bill. With that, I agree with the tabling of the bill, and I second it.
Thank you. So the motion is made by Mr. Klinghammer to table, second by Mr. White. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? The bill is tabled.
Can we, will that, Michael, will the substitute bill be online so the folks, does it get?
It's
put
on-
The
it's online
substitute
already.
bill's online now.
Okay.
It's been online
It's been
since
online
last
since,
week.
yeah.
Yes.
Thursday?
Yes.
Last Thursday it went online.
Okay.
Actually, Friday afternoon, but.
Sir?
All right. Yes, we are at announcements and miscellaneous, so fire away.
Just to save you folks time that want to look at the substitute bill, look at pages 12, 19, and 34 have the bulk of the changes. That's 12, 19, and 34. This meeting is also on video. You can pull it up down the road too. I would also say anybody that's in my district, if you got any issues, contact me, okay? And we'll go from there. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I have that.
Yeah, just to clarify more, so you all know this, but for the people in the audience, we have a community development department. You may like them, you may not like them, they may like them or not like them. They are professional people. Mr. Hammond used to be one of them. They are people whose life is dedicated to trying to do the right thing on this. Ultimately, the decisions are yours. But I resent anybody suggesting that somehow getting personal and somehow that they're trying to mislead people. That is not true. And I don't like the fact that people have suggested you have motives here other than trying to do the right thing. And I will guarantee you that the people who work for me, their motive is to try to do the right thing to make sure you know all the facts so you can make a decision. And as you know, we get stuff up here all the time, rezonings and everything. I don't tell our people whether to recommend a rezoning or not. They're professionals. I want to know what their professional opinion is. And then we listen to everybody else. I listen to you, and you know, we make a decision. So I very much resent the suggestion that somehow people are trying to mislead anyone.
Any other questions or comments? Well, it's been a spirited evening. Representative Conway, I'm sure this is much different than Jefferson City. Not at all tonight. So, for the good of the order, I have a motion? Motion to dismiss. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We are dismissed.